Okay. Hiya, my name's Charlie and welcome to my channel. And today we've got the lovely Charlie of Charles Heathcote.
Hello.
And as you can tell from the title, we are doing the Literally Doris tag.
Yes.
Much anticipated tag that we have created.
Yes, we have been planning this one for a while now.
With a good
And oh yeah, definitely months. And we have compiled 10 questions/prompts for people, all based around the wonderful world that our Doris inhabits. Did you want to introduce our Doris, or should I try?
Go ahead. Who knows the books better than the author himself?
These books are part of a series about Mrs. Doris Copeland, who I describe as an atomic housewife. She is like Hyacinth Bouquet with a tendency to throw table lamps, and each book follows her as she deals in small town politics. And the last book, Royally Doris, was released in September. And in conjunction with that, we thought that we would put this tag together as something fun for you all to engage with.
And if you stay, oh no, not if you stay, there'll be a little announcement, spoilers, for next year, that you can join in with as well to do with the Doris books. So you can look out for that in the next few days.
So I think, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and all the links to Charlie's books and where to buy them, etc., will be in the description, as all of Charlie's links as well, obviously, as always.
And they, we are reaching a festive period of the year, and books make fantastic presents, even if you just wanted to gift them to yourself.
The Doris books are perfect gifts because they're like the most, like this time of year when everything's a bit depressing and a bit boring and a bit like, it's a bit like not boring, but it's a bit like everyone needs a bit of comfort. These books are perfect comfort reads. They're perfect, like they're amusing, they're fun, they're uplifting, they're heartwarming, they're creative, they're brilliant. Sorry?
I was just saying, and all of the synonyms. That was a very fantastic way of putting it.
What?
Yes.
So we'll start with, Charlie can start with number 1, and then that's what we said, didn't we?
Yes. Yes. So our first prompt is Arold, a book from a strong first-person perspective that you enjoyed. I chose David Copperfield for this. I kept umming and ahhing over where to go, but David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, I think, is a book that has one of the strongest first-person narrators that I've ever read, and is a book that is completely full of themes, motifs, some characters who go through transformations that I don't necessarily agree with or like. And it's a novel I left conflicted because there were so many different directions that I wanted the book to go in. But I just think there are a few Dickens titles where I say that they would be great entry points into Dickens. And I think we've talked recently about another one. But David Copperfield, when I just went a bit ham on this book and annotated it and tore it apart, it's just very much resonated and stuck with me, even though it's been about 2 years since I read it.
Yeah, I'm going to reread that one when it comes up along the Mega Dickens along that Katie's books and things with Mega Dickens along. My answer for this, I nearly put David Copperfield. I was like a hair's breadth, but then I was like, do you know what? I'm going to talk about one I read this year, which is one I'm going to say about, which is Great Expectations, because I loved this book. I haven't talked about it properly on my channel, other than maybe I've talked about it with you, but obviously I don't think I've said it on my channel.
Yeah.
And I just loved it so much. Okay, it's the first classic I think I've given 5 stars to, because I just couldn't fault it. I was like, the whole reading experience was amazing. I listened to an audio book and also physically, as you know, Charlie. I know Charlie knows all this. And but just the story just swept me away, and it was just it's just like so immersive. The characters were just brilliant. It had so much humor in it, which I wasn't really expecting, and I definitely think the book brought out, which I know you said about with your different audio books you listen to. Yeah, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it, and like you said about the entry point. I think you've said that this is another good entry point as well. You'd agree, wouldn't you, that to Dickens?
Yeah, because it's one of his shorter ones as well. That's why I think that this, maybe a bit more than David Copperfield, is a good introduction into Dickens. But I agree. I think we've chosen two very strong first-person narrators there.
Next, we'll head to our Doris, Doris is obviously she's not narrating. Arold is the narrator of the books, and Doris is obviously what the books are all about. Charlie's books. So anyway, this is an assured female lead.
Yes. So when
this, Charlie?
So when I said assured female lead here, it was because I think we've had a lot of tags where people talk about a strong female lead, and I think that a strong female lead encapsulates lots of different things, and I think that when people think strong, they don't necessarily think what strength comes from and how people display different strengths. And so assured is about somebody who is entirely sure of themselves, who they are as a person, and what they're looking for in life. And they are very assured about who they are. So that is why we said assured as opposed to strong with this one.
So my answer for this is Leah from Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies by Maddie Mortimer, which is currently sitting at my favourite book of the year. I had to pick her because she's just so... I just love the character so much, and I feel like, and it's not even because of the struggles and things that she's gone through that I love her. I love her just how she relates to her family members, how her personality in general. Like, she's just, I just feel like, I feel like she fits this definition.
This is one I agree with you as well. I chose a different character, but I agree with you about Leah, simply because I think that people would see what this character's going through and maybe think of what she's going through as some sort of weakness. But I think that in terms of all the conflicts that she's going through within the book, such as she's at some points worried that what she's going through is directly correlated to the fact that she left religion and the sins that she committed. And yet, through all that and this worry that she might not have been the best person throughout her life and she might have committed wrongs, she's also very much she's still aware, she's still a mother to her daughter, and she's still trying to be the best that she can be for her daughter. And it's almost like this spider web of seeing how she's connected to people and how what she's going through impacts them as well. And you get this idea of her importance within the novel and within the world that she inhabits as you go through the book. So yeah, I'd agree with that one.
She's just not, and she's not defined by the cancer. Like obviously the narrative is surrounding a lot of all of that stuff, but she's so much more than that. And like you said, with her family and the friends and everyone in her life, but yeah, she's just such, you can see how strong she is in this as you read it, and she's just brilliant. She's fun, and she's so that's my answer for that. What's your answer, Charlie?
My answer for this was Olive from Olive Kitteridge. And I have to say I was somewhat inspired by Doris for this, because when I came to read Olive Kitteridge after so many years, now seeing this older female protagonist represented in fiction, that was a great plus for me. But this character is perhaps more acerbic than Doris, and there are moments of light within the novel, but it isn't a comedy. So, and the way that the story is told, you get to see how people respond to having a character like Olive in their lives. And throughout the novel, despite the fact that she's acerbic, she's a bit bossy, and people throughout the novel seem to be feeling sorry somewhat for her husband. You also, I don't know how to explain this. You get a good sense that, similar to what I was saying with relation to this prompt, that she knows who she is, and it's not necessarily a novel where she's going through some sort of almighty change because of the point that she is in her life. She knows who she is, and she's saying that really you can like it or lump it, that sort of thing. And I quite like that, really. I like having someone say, yeah. So I went with the third prompt is Elf. Recommend a book with a strong core friendship. And for this, I've gone with Pet by Akwaeke Imezi. Friendship in this book is perhaps somewhat, it might seem somewhat too perfect, but I think that considering the almost fairy tale aspect of the book, it works incredibly well. And I would have appreciated friendships like this during my childhood, and the discussions that I had towards conflict resolution and the way in which these two characters support one another throughout everything that's going on within the novel. And even when we have some of the more darker moments within the book, these two are still friends and they're still working through it. And there's a lot within the book surrounding this idea that no friendship or relationship is perfect. They need work, but also expressing to the reader the way in which these relationships and friendships you can work through these problems. They don't just say, oh, we can get over this quickly. It talks about how to. And yeah, I just thought that this was a very well-rounded friendship within a novel.
That's a good answer. And they do have a lovely friendship. I love the friendship in that book. Good answer. My answer.
What's yours?
I've got two answers, which I can't decide which to pick from. Should I just go for both of them?
Go on then. We'll let you have two.
I've got
It's our tag.
I've got Empress and Anaya, but based upon what you said, maybe Empress and Anaya isn't the strongest friendship. It's not like the strongest friendship. It's just a fun friendship, and they only have just within the pages of the book. It's a whole book is about friendship, and it's sort of a Freaky Friday situation. I mentioned this before, and where they sort of swap bodies, and then like through them sort of becoming each other, they gain a great understanding of each other and in each other's lives.
Right.
And I just love that, and it's a little novella. It's not very long. It's a lovely book. The friendship, it's fun teenage friendship, and I enjoyed it. And the other one answer that I want to give is Miss Svenson's Beetle by Rachel Joyce, which I don't know.
Oh yes, yeah.
Have you read that?
I have read that.
You have read it. I know you've read, because I knew you'd read other Joyce, but yeah, and I just love it because Marjorie and Enid, because they're just such fun characters, and Enid is very different from Marjorie, much like me and you, Charlie. And Enid is quite wacky, and Marjorie is a bit more sensible. You are wacky, but I'm more wacky, I would say. And
wacky, I'm wacky. We're all whacking each other over it.
Yeah, but I just love their friendship because, again, throughout the course of the book, it develops, and I just think they're just wonderful characters. They're really like they really like lean on each other as throughout the page as the pages sort of turn, and they find strengths within each other, which I just love so much.
No, I quite agree. As I've said to many of your answers now, they have one of those relationships that we've seen popularized before in fiction and on screen, where you wouldn't expect these two characters to gel so well. And yeah, I this is one where I would quite like to see it adapted as well.
Yeah, that would be
I
brilliant.
don't know, a television drama where you could have all the hijinks, or a film, but I think it would make a very successful adaptation.
Yeah, like kind of like Around the World in 80 Days kind of.
Characters.
Sorry?
Exactly, that's exactly what I was thinking. Yes.
Oh my god. It's so weird. It's so weird sometimes that we do that. Because that's kind of cinematic, kind of like what you were saying, but it's broken down into televisable chunks.
Serious. Yeah. See, we should create this. We should pitch it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's already happening. But yeah.
Well, if it is, it won't have us.
No, there you go then. It'll be rubbish.
But it's already working.
Yeah. So prompt number 4, we're going for Edith. We love Edith. Not a main star of the show, but a side character you adored. So for this, I have picked. I was torn between 2 characters again, because this isn't me, my permanent state of indecision. But I'm going to say Cyril Pennington from People Person by Candice Carty-Williams, who is in fact not the main character at all, because this book is about 5 siblings, and Cyril Pennington is the father of those siblings, and he's the connection between all 5 of them, obviously. And even though you don't hear a lot about him, but he appears at the beginning of the book in this big gold Jeep kind of thing, collecting all the children when they are younger. And he's talked about quite a lot from the different children, and he's just so funny. He's just so much humor, and as the story goes on, you understand a bit more about him, and yeah, I just think he's just a wonderful character. And even though he's not mentioned and he isn't featuring, you don't hear his narrative necessarily, he's just brilliant. That's my answer.
So I went with Burrick out of the Realm of the Elderling series by Robin Hobb, because he does appear in a few of the books, and in the beginning of the series he takes on the role of a friend and mentor role to Fitz, the protagonist, and over time you could say he almost becomes a father figure to him, but there's just such a connection there with that character, and he doesn't really pull his punches when it comes to Fitz and helping raise him. And Robin Hobb is a person who doesn't mind torturing the characters, and in doing so also happening to torture the readers. And there is quite a long gap between the first series in which we see Fitz and the second series in which we see Fitz, as something quite significant happens within those books. And it's just the journey the character goes on, and whenever he appeared in the pages, it's one of those where I was just thrilled to see him, even if he wasn't necessarily feeling the kindest towards our protagonist at that time.
Oh.
And yeah, he's one of those characters, like a lot within that series, that actually sticks in my mind. But his is perhaps one of the stories that I just connected with more than the main story going on as well.
Sounds good.
Next we have Janice Dooley of Little Street, a favourite antagonist from any form of media, book, television show, or film. This, I went with Cersei Lannister from A Song of Ice and Fire. I didn't watch Game of Thrones past the first season, but in the books, I ended up rooting for Cersei, or however you pronounce it, from quite early on in the series, really. And when she finally got made into a perspective character within the books, I was very happy. And she became one of the characters who I started measuring the book out by. So I would see how far I had to read before I got to a Cersei chapter. And then I would stop and start the next day reading with her, because everybody would talk about how much of a villain she was. And I could have even used her as somebody who is an assured female lead, because all of her motivations and everything that she did within life, within the book, I understood. And I kept seeing her as this mother who was simply trying to protect her children, in very extreme circumstances, in this almost medieval world where everybody was kind of looking to kill each other. And, you know, it made sense to me. All of her actions made sense to me. All of her heartbreak and everything going on, I could understand. And I didn't see her very much as a villain, as somebody doing what they had to do to make sure that both she survived and that her children would survive. I won't go into spoilers around that, but there is a lot of heartbreak surrounding her character, and she almost has this tragic Lady Macbeth storyline going on, and she became one of the more well-rounded antagonists for me. And I say antagonist because other people see her as an antagonist.
Yeah, I think definitely people.
And she probably should be. She should be seen as queen. She should be. But we'd get on. She'd probably kill me, but I think we'd get on.
Why not? Yeah. That's a good answer. Right, my answer is the character from the book that I just finished this week.
Where the lemon trees
grow. Yeah, as long as the lemon trees grow. By Zulfa too. Yeah, either way. And yeah, this is just such. I love this book so much. Anyway, it's set in Syria, and its main character is Salama, but the character who I am she's going to talk about is like not a vision, but so Salama has had a head injury as a result of like being in, I think like her house got bombed or something like that. And as soon as she awoke from the head injury, this character called Kauf appeared, and he's almost like sort of this nightmarish kind of character. And even though he's not real, and she knows he's not real, he's this sinister presence within the book, and he's sort of shows her visions and sort of threatens. He wants her to escape Syria, basically, with her sister-in-law, and so he's just this. But he comes across especially at the beginning of the book, he comes across as this sort of villainish character because he's threatening her. If she doesn't do what he wants, then he's going to sort of like shatter her world, because basically when he appears, she can't. It sort of shuts her vision to the rest of the world. Sometimes he shows her things and traumatizes her, and yeah. So he sort of comes across as this villainous character. But his actual name, Kauf himself, means in Syrian, I think it means fear. I think it's in Syrian. Kauf is a sinister character though, and that is why I think it works as an antagonist, I would say. But this book is so brilliant. You know, I said I thought it was going to be a favourite. It is brilliant.
Yeah.
It might not be like, it's not like my number one, but it is definitely high up. It's a great book. I knew it would be. Anyway, question number 6. The WI, a non-fiction favourite. My answers for this one is A Mind Spread Out on the Ground by Alicia Elliott, and also Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And they're both 2 Indigenous authors. The 2 books are so different, but they're still like some of my favourite non-fiction reads of the year. I haven't actually read that much non-fiction, to be fair, this year. But they're just such brilliant books. Braiding Sweetgrass is kind of very sort of nature driven, and it's sort of, I listened to it on audiobook, and if you listen, I know those people talk about the audiobook, but it's very, very calming, and it's very it's like the kind of book that sort of feels like you're almost like it's like a meditation almost as you listen to it. It's so brilliant, and the actual information you hear about the way she talks about nature and the way she talks about humans within it, like it's just so brilliant. It's just incredible. It's an amazing book. And then A Mind Spread Out on the Ground, which I read more recently this month for the Skoden readathon, talks about obviously her experience of being Indigenous, and lots of stuff to do with the Indigenous experience, but it also talks about depression. This is the thing that like captured my personal like heart, like how she talks about depression was her experience was quite similar to my own personal experience of it. And it was just like, you know, when you hear something and it sort of taps into something within yourself, I was just like, yeah, I was just blown away by that book for that reason. So yeah, those are my two favorites and my picks for this answer.
For me, I went with Fabulosa by Paul Baker. Sorry, I didn't bring the book with me, but I'm certain it's Paul Baker. And this is a book that discusses gay slang from the late 19th century through to now, and how some of the language has been lost due to the fact that gay people no longer feel that they have to hide. And it very much goes into the culture of the last 120 years, but it's non-fiction that's written how I always maintain, and I say in every single video where I talk about non-fiction, using like narrative techniques that fiction writers would use in order to move the story along, so it still has this propulsive feel to the book that you want to keep on reading. And it's not strange the way that this author writes about language, but it's interesting, and you can see the love that the author has for language, and in particular something that is dialectical. And it's a book that I would talk about because it mentions Around the Horn with Julian and Sandy, which I've discovered you can listen to on BBC Sounds, and there was a CD at work, so you can find it on YouTube if you wanted to listen to hear some of the slang that the author is talking about used here. But it's a book that I would mention this at work, and volunteers and staff members that I didn't think would have any knowledge of this would know all about it, and it inspired a lot of discussion as well, and I was very appreciative of that. And I think that it's one of those books where it helps you to learn more about history that you didn't previously know about, but you ought to. And I also think that's just from a historical perspective, but from a language perspective as well, it's really interesting to look at where the language came from, why it was used, and the people who used it, not just as a means of survival, but a means of connection and understanding, really. And it was sad to see the reasons that the language fell out of use and the ways in which it was viewed by society at the time. And it's almost a surreal experience to start viewing this lost because some people still know of it, language as a character in its own right. But I'm very impressed that the author was able to do that within this book, to leave such an impact and to cause such conversations.
That sounds good. I know I knew this was like a favorite of yours because I remember when you read it how much it sort of affected you, and you sort of like
yeah
that's good. Go the next one.
For our seventh prompt, we have Septuagenarian, which is recommend a book with an elderly protagonist. And for this, I went with Drive Your Plough Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Tokarczuk. And I can't remember who translated this. So, Charlie, if you would be so kind as to write that in the description, that'd be fantastic.
Screen, it should have the translator.
But yes, I didn't expect this book to be what this book was. I thought that it was going to be something like a Miss Marple novel. And in a way, it is, because there is this mystery surrounding certain deaths within a town. It was almost like Nordic noir, and it appealed to that part of me that likes the films of the Coen brothers, specifically Fargo, with the snow and the way that landscape is included within the prose. But the main character is one who became a main character, and I can't reveal much about her without spoiling the ending of the book. But I can say that she became one of those characters who I supported regardless of the decisions they made and the acts they took within the novel. And I thought her particularly well-rounded, and I thought that the author had done a good job of capturing a character who has gone through decades worth of life, and through such a short book you're able to see how she has been built into the person that she is within the book. And I just particularly enjoyed meeting her.
It's one I want to read, actually, and I saw that when I was in the bookshop, when I was on holiday. I was trying to make a decision, but then I saw, because obviously Annie Ernaux that was the one I went for, Annie Ernaux's Simple Passion. I saw drive your plow over the bones of the dead in the shop, and I was like bobbing an arm between those two, and that's why I went for Annie Ernaux.
No, I mean, there's still time for you to get to it, Charlie.
This year it's not.
Well, not this year, maybe, but it's also not the Books of Jacob, which is huge. You know, like you can. That's another book by Olga Tokarczuk.
I'm not in the market.
I would much recommend this very slim volume to that huge, like, murderous book.
You should be proud of yourself for reading that this year, because that was like a challenge.
Proud of myself, of course. I was proud of myself. It really hurt my arthritic wrists.
And you read not long after that, you read the other one, the winner of the actual winner, the
Tomb of Sand, yeah.
You read them both quite near each other.
In fact, Tomb of Sand could have. Sorry, Tomb of Sand could have worked for this as well. Anyway, sorry, go on.
Okay,
by Frederick
Backman. Yeah, and I love this book so much. I read it years and years ago. I really want to reread it. It's just so heartfelt, and like, yeah, it's about this guy who's basically, his wife has died. He's sorry to content warnings for suicide. He's kind of like done with the world. It's not like dramatic in a dramatic way. He's not doing it in a dramatic way. He's just he's just over it, isn't he? He's over life. Have you read it? You've read this?
I haven't read this one. I was going to mention another book that Barkman wrote, which sounds equally, when you talk about A Man Called Ove, it sounds like that book is equally as sad as the one I read.
But this one isn't sad. So this one is about found family, I would say. In the core heart of it, it's kind of like at the beginning of the book, he's by himself. He's done with everything. He just wants life to be over with. His wife is no longer here. He doesn't want to exist anymore. That's basically it. But he keeps being interrupted in his mission to end his life by his local neighborhood, and then he sort of, like I said, found family. It's sort of that sort of thing, and I just loved it so much. And Uwe himself, the main character himself, he's a grumpy old man, but he's just so, he's got heart and humor, and he just cares so much. And I just love this book, and I could not say this.
It does sound very much like the one I read. My grandmother sends her regards and apologizes, especially with the found family aspect. And although the protagonist in that is the, I think, 8-year-old granddaughter of somebody who has died, her grandmother's given her many stories that help to concoct this found family. And in finding these people and bringing them together, she's also able to learn more about her grandmother and rebuild her life, and not get over her grief, but get past the first hurdle of it. But I talk about my grandmother sends her regards and apologizes. I read it in 2019, and I was waiting for my mum to finish work, so I chose to start reading that one in a coffee shop, and I had to put the book down because they were getting towards a funeral scene, and I was like, I haven't cried at a book since 2006, but this could do it.
That sounds
So I
nice.
put that book down and just drank my coffee.
I'm gonna want to read that now, Charlie. You always do this to me. You always
Oh,
make me want to pick up books.
I yeah, I really do recommend. Well, I still need to read A Man Called Eve. But rock music. What do you turn to when you're feeling somewhat dismayed with the world?
Right. So my answers for this is I've got lots of answers, but I'm going to say a few because everyone has a few things that they kind of a few core things they do to cheer yourself up. So mine is I've got Drag Race because you can never go wrong with Drag Race, and if ever you're feeling crap, Drag Race does always cheer you up, which cheers me up often.
I specifically recommend the earlier seasons for if you really want some proper cheer.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I would tend to like a series 3 or a 6. No,
Bob,
season 8 was Bob.
that's my favorite.
Season 8.
No, in that case,
Okay.
my go-to would be rewatching Bob season because I love Bob so much, and also Monet. But that's Monet is later, isn't it? She.
Monet season 10, All Stars 4, and All Stars 7.
Anyway, also I've got when I'm feeling really crappy. This is all stuff you know about me, but the audience don't necessarily know. Like I said, I watch Doctor Who is another staple, and specifically if I'm feeling really down, I put the Husbands of River Song, the episode with Peter Capaldi and River Song, and that's like my favorite Doctor Who episode of all time, I would say, because it just always cheers me up.
Yeah, it was early this year you said to go back, and so I started watching the Christmas specials, just straight, of Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi, and I was very grateful for you when you mentioned Peter Capaldi's Christmas specials because they were perhaps some of the most festive television that, although they still managed to maintain some of the plot from the show, there's still a coziness and a festiveness to them. And there's a level of threat, but it's never like in grave peril.
Yeah, and that episode especially there's not really high threat in that episode at all. There's not really any threat in that episode. Not really.
But some great continuity.
It's just really, I just love it so much, and it's got Matt Lucas in it, who is Nardole, who is like one of my favorite side characters, who I just love so much. So you can't really go wrong. River Song is my favorite. So yeah, that always cheers me up. And then also the last thing I'm going to say, I always, if I'm feeling a bit down and in the car, because obviously we're often in our cars, aren't we? I put on Lizzo, and specifically About Damn Time, because the lyrics. What?
As soon as she said her name, I knew you were going to say that song.
That's because that's weird. You know each other too well. Yeah. So it's because of the lyrics. Turn up the music, turn down the lights. I've got a feeling I'm going to be all right, and that is exactly just perfect. And there's something about the song. It always gets me through. So that's my answer. Now, what's yours?
Well, for me, again, I have multiples. And indeed, I forgot to mention Drag Race, but I went with the very predictable ones for me, which are Dinner Ladies. And I've talked about how I'll watch 3 certain episodes and see it like a film. But there have been many occasions in my life when I've just put on Series 1, Episode 1, and watched the entirety straight through. It's 16 episodes, it's 8 hours. But sometimes that's what you need. And one that I never thought that I would say, but as I've got older, it has become quite helpful, is walks in the local forest.
Oh, that's a really good one.
And when I was, when I was younger and a bit heftier, I hated walking. And I particularly didn't like going in the forest with all its steep hills and stuff. But the older I've gotten, the more I've done it. The more I've just come to appreciate it. And I think some of it comes from like the recognition of the arthritis and everything, and thinking, well, you know, there might come a time when I can't actually do this. So that makes me appreciate it more. But especially like I'm I'm not sure I'll go up today because of how bleak it is, but there is something about going up there on a bit of a bleak day when there are fewer people around and just enjoying the silence and the solitude of it all.
I really do think a walk is a good shout because it just, like you said, fresh air is really good for you. And when you're in a forest, or like, I'm sure it's like been, I've heard somewhere, it's like scientifically proven forests near water, like, so like a river or ocean, or like a lake or something, anything like that. It's been scientifically proven to boost your serotonin and all
This
that.
explains why I like walking down the canal so much.
Yeah, water. Yeah.
Apart from when the dog decides to fall in.
Oh, little Sally, that was traumatic. That was so traumatic.
It was. It's been quite traumatic down the canal recently. I should probably stop taking her down the towpath.
Has she done it again?
Not recently, but it was the third time when she did it, when she mistook it for the path, not the canal. 9. Monologue. Tell us a story about yourself. And for this, I went with a story that probably a few people have heard now. If you didn't know, the Our Doris series was originally started as a series of monologues from the perspective of Arold, who I would say later on in the series is more of a novel style of storytelling, but in the first ones it was very much based around monologues. And so I thought this would be a great way to get to know each other more. And so for me, I went with when I first started uni and I was getting the bus in. So I went to uni very nearby. It's within an hour's drive from my house. And somebody I went to school with who lived on the street across from me was also going in. But her days ended up not matching with mine. And rather than come all the way back to Macclesfield on a Tuesday at 8 o'clock when I had to be back in uni for 9 o'clock in the morning, I decided to stay in Congleton with my grandmother because the bus stop is right at the bottom of her street.
Oh.
And everything's going fine. I don't carry a lot of money with me when I'm 18. I did have a phone, but I rarely used it, but I needed it this day. And so it's a Wednesday. I get on my bus and it's nearly 3/4 of an hour down the roads to the uni. And you've seen Crew now.
Yes.
So, but basically, the bus stopped on one side of the road and I could have got off it there. But the driver said, no, don't worry, I'm coming back in a bit, so I'll just bring you around this way. I thought, well, that's nice of you. You know, say, you know, I was early for uni and thought, well, that's fine. So we get to the bus station. It goes, oh, no, I'm not going back yet.
No.
Well, why did you tell me that then? I could have got off there. And he said, just hop on that bus there. He'll be able to take you. Like, okay. So I got straight onto the next bus, which said it was going to Chester, which isn't really where I wanted to go. And at this point, I've not even been watching where I am. I don't know Crew at all. It's the first time I've actually been in the town.
Oh, no.
And I say to the bus driver here, where I'm now having to pay again, that I stayed on because he said he could take me back, but now he's not leaving for 20 minutes. And he says, yeah, well, I'll drop you off at the bottom of the road and tell you where to go. Right. He didn't take me to my university. He took me to South Cheshire College. I didn't go to uni there. He sent me to college to know the university existed. And at this point, I now had no money left.
No,
well,
Charlie.
I had a little bit of money left. That's a lie. I did have a little bit of money left. But I have to figure out how to get back to the bus station in a town I've never been in before.
Which is
and so I start walking. This is after I've walked in the direction that he sent me to find my uni and realised it wasn't there. And I start walking back the way that the bus brought me, looking at the roads. Like at one point I saw Ruskin Road and I thought, well, this has something to do with John Ruskin. Clearly, he wrote about trains. I'll follow this road. I'm on the phone to my mother asking whether she knows anything about crew. She doesn't. And in the meantime, the lesson, whatever you have it at uni, has now started. I'm about half an hour late. I've had to send them a text to say I am somewhere in crew, but I've no idea where. Get back to the bus station and meet the lady who I'd sat next to on the there, and she says, "You're getting back on the bus quite soon." I said, "I've not even got there yet."
No.
And look, the last of my money I could pay to get to uni. And I had to ring my mother and say to her, "You're going to have to come and pick me up from crew because I've got no money left." Only to get dropped off outside the uni, to walk inside and be told that the tutor had decided to rearrange all of our lessons to Tuesday when the other group met, so I didn't need to be there.
No, Charlie, all of that and the money as well. How much money was it?
I think it came to it was near £10 in the end because of all the all the buses I'd had to jump on here and there. Yeah.
£10 just to get there.
Eventually, I ended up just paying my mother to take me to uni in the car because I had several very unfortunate trips on that bus. One where the bus drove straight past me one night, and this was the thing ended at 7 o'clock. And
Was this before you drove?
This is before I drove, yeah. The bus was there was like this unspoken rule that they'd let us out 15 minutes before the thing ended. So it should have been 7:15. When the bus went at 7:15, they didn't let us out till 7. The bus arrived at 8:15, and then it drove right past me. So I didn't get a bus until 9:15.
Yeah.
And yeah. So 9:15, and
That's awful, Charlie.
I'd been stuck there whilst they jackhammered the road because even the library wasn't open then. And I threw up on the bus.
Oh no, Charlie!
You don't want to be drinking.
That's awful.
And then another time I left to get the bus, and they got a new driver who still works for the bus company, and she was a menace in a bus. She hit every single tree. She nearly crashed into a lot. She just blew me neck. She was the Lewis Hamilton of bus driving. I can tell you that. And after that, I just said to my mother, "If I pay you, will you just start taking me?" That's what happened.
Terrifying.
Story about I gave up on buses.
I don't know how I can follow that.
There you go. Let's just story of your childhood with Emily.
The whole internet wants to hear this. My nickname is Charlie Rats. Oh, no. Should I say that? Or should I say the story about me being chased by the sheep? That's the one Emily always likes to tell them.
Well, we like sheep as well, so yeah. Let's hear the story of how Charlie got chased by sheep.
Yeah, so I was up in your way, Yorkshire. I was up Yorkshire way.
In Cheshire, yeah.
Yeah. And it was the first time we stayed. It was when we were kids. We didn't go on that many like. Normally the holidays we went on were a little bit more mellow, and this was it felt like to us like a proper holiday. So we were in this cottage, and it was in the middle of Yorkshire, the Yorkshire Dales. Is that the right word? The Dales? I don't know, the countryside, the Yorkshire countryside. So, and the whole farmhouse, it was like a farmhouse, I think we were staying in. And so we ventured out. It was one day of the days we were going out for a walk, and we were going along the countryside. And yeah, so we were heading back. It was just as was heading back. So we was heading back, and there were loads and loads of sheep around us, and I saw them, and obviously little Charlie was terrified of these sheep because I'm Charlie, and for some reason I was terrified of the sheep. I don't know why, and I think it's because they had these big horns. Not horns. What do you call them?
We call them horns.
Yeah, so these big horns. Stop, Charlie. Don't roll your face. It's not like they were different word up in Yorkshire. I also
anyway. Yeah, it's not a different country. It's just a thing.
Anyway, and so honestly, it kind of looked like something out of the setting. Obviously, looked like something out of Jane Eyre. It was just so gorgeous. Or in the middle of nowhere, and anyway, so I was terrified. I was in a place I didn't know, and I saw these sheep with these big horns, and so for some reason, I took it upon myself to run back to the farm, but the sheep started chasing after me, and Like, yeah, so that's it. They chased the sheep, chased after me, and I don't know whether they caught up with me or not. I don't think I was hurt, but yeah. And that's why they always used to take the mick out of me for being terrified of the bloody sheep. And it was not
I mean,
that funny, but yeah. Sorry?
sheep can be terrible creatures. Like,
And yeah, they chased me and it scared me. And little Charlie was scared. And that's why Emily they always used to, whenever I was growing up, whenever there was a thing, they always used to tease, say Charlie and the sheep. And they'd always, which doesn't sound right, but yeah, the story of Charlie and the sheep. And that's the story of Charlie and the sheep. I was chased by a sheep as a child and I was terrified.
if I don't give stories about sheep about that, the main sheep story I always talk about is the prolapsed vagina. So we had different experiences.
That's my story. Anyway, number 10. Should we go on to number 10? The North. A northern author you want to celebrate, or from celebrate an author from the north of your country. We've got as a little caveat is the word. So I've got an author I've only read one book by, but I just love her so much. So I'm going to shout out Jessica Andrews because I read Milk Teeth by her, and I really, really want to read Saltwater by the end of the year if I can, which is her debut. But yeah, I read her second book and it was just so brilliant, and it was sort of a very bittersweet kind of book. It's not bittersweet, but it's quite like jarring, and it was like I just loved it so much. It just really, it's one of my favorite books again of the year. I just loved it so much. So yeah, Jessica Andrews. That's my answer.
Yeah, she's an author I've been meaning to get to as well.
I think she's worth the hype.
I'm sure she won an award for
on the Portico
being
Prize
a writer
in 2019.
That's it.
2019. I've got her debut novel over there, The Saltwater. But I started with Milk Teeth because I don't even know how. I think it's because I saw from Andrew's book chat. I was talking about Jessica Andrews, and I must have been scrolling on the library app or spotted it come up. And the first book wasn't available, so I just clicked on this one, and I was just like, it was brilliant. Highly recommend it.
That was another reason that I came across her name, was because every year since I brought out a book, I've always entered the Portico Prize because they accept indie authors, but I've never even made it to the long list.
Oh no, Charlie, you will.
I mean, to be fair, I'm not really writing these kinds of books, but yes, no, this is a prize that I pay attention to, and you've just reminded me how I came to know the name. The author that I thought that I would talk about is a writer who our Doris probably wouldn't exist without them, who is Joy Winkler.
Oh, I love that. Sorry.
Yeah. So Joy is a poet who started the Macclesfield Creative Writing Group in 2011. Prior to that, she had been Cheshire Poet Laureate in 2007, which saw the release of the book On the Edge. During our groups, in the beginning, we usually do a writing burst. And then I've said this story before, but one week we had a prompt for gardening. And I know nothing about gardening, but after about 10 minutes, the line, "Our Doris has created an unhealthy obsession with slugs," came into my head. And that is still the first line of Our Doris. And then every week, if I got stuck, I would just write something with Doris, to the point that people started asking me when there would be a book out. And I kept saying, no, I'm not going to do a book. And then another Northern writer, Margaret Holbrook, released a book called Cul-de-sac Tales. And that gave me the format for Our Doris. And so I decided to write 13 stories, each one from a year of Doris's life, until I had a novel. And that ended up being 10 stories in the end, because it felt more appropriate. Joy got invited to be part of an author panel at Knutsford Library, and they were looking for a male writer, and she said I had a book coming out, which I didn't. I had stories from Our Doris. I had 4 stories written for Our Doris. And I turned up with the A4 sheets of paper and read from it, and had to pretend the book was coming out in the summer. This was the February. I quickly got some writer friends on board to edit the book for me, whilst I worked away at the end of the book. And in the following month, wrote the entirety of the final 6 chapters of Our Doris. And if Joy hadn't really had that like arm up my back moment saying that I had a book coming out, then it probably wouldn't have been released because I was so uncertain about publishing it independently. And since then, Joy's released poetry dramas such as Town and Lightning Under Their Skirts, which toured around. Her latest novel was Morgan, which I believe I sent a copy to your sister, which I won't call it autofiction, but Joy was brought up in Flamborough near Barnsley. And so this novel is set there and is about a young woman who is not cast out by her mother, but her mother decides that she's unfit to raise her, so sends her to live with an auntie. And everyone around her really looks down on her as this wild child who will never settle. And people start seeing her as witchy because she's very bookish and she doesn't conform to what they want. And it goes back and forth through time. And I just think that it's a very you can see her skill as a poet when it comes to the prose within the novel. And like I say, I just thought, since we wouldn't really have Doris if it hadn't been for Joy, not that she's anything like Doris, just that she was the one who pushed me to bring the book out, then I thought it best to kind of mention her here.
And it's the perfect place to mention her and the perfect way to finish this tag. So that's perfect answer.
There we go then.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for watching the tag. Or should we tag some people? Should we do Emily from Nobel Novels? You say
definitely. Dane from Dane Cobain / Dane Reeves.
Then shall we do Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf?
Sophie of Redhead Reading.
Okay. 1 second. Shall we say Stuart from The Library is Open?
Yeah. Emma of Emma Rosen Books.
Okay. And how many have we got now? Should we do 2 more? I'm going to tag Kevy from Safe Kevy if she wants to do it.
I'm going to tag AJ of AJ Dunn Reads and Writes.
And I know who I'm going to tag. One of my favourite people who I haven't actually spoken about on my channel yet. But Jennifer Loves Books, because she is just so lovely, and I always love her answers for tag questions. So I'm going to say her. Is that it?
Okay. I have one more. Let's go with Brian from Bookish.
We'll tag Brian.
There we go. That's fine.
Tag your it, Brian. So thank you everyone for watching the video. Do you have any last thoughts, Charlie?
Well, yeah. Again, thank you to everyone for watching this. Thank you to everybody who is going to acquire a book having watched this. And if you have already read the Doris books, then let us know one of your favourite scenes.
Or one of your favourite scenes or one of your favourite characters. Let us know it all below.
Exactly.
See you soon. Goodbye.